Hello everyone, and welcome to Talking to the Void. Today is August 26th, 2023, and I will be talking about a new movie on Netflix called Heart of Stone, starring Gal Gadot. Just a quick note, I am trying to do multiple things at once today, so I might have to leave to take care of my laundry, which just means that I have to take my microphone off, so when I come back to it, the sound quality might be different. That's usually the explanation for any changes in sound quality during any of my podcasts, is my recording got interrupted, and I had to take off my microphone and then put it back on, and trying to get it in the exact same spot so that I get the same sound quality is kind of hard. So, anyway, I will be talking about a new movie on Netflix called Heart of Stone, starring Gal Gadot, and I wasn't expecting to be doing another full podcast episode on something so soon, but after watching the movie, I had a lot of thoughts that I wanted to share, so here we are. Some of my thoughts are overall observations of modern films, and I have a lot to say about modern movies as a whole, so there may be another podcast episode coming your way soon about the pitfalls of modern movies and what needs to happen to make them better. Anyway, this is your spoiler alert for the movie Heart of Stone, and now let's get into it. So, the plot of the movie. The movie follows our heroine, Rachel Stone, played by Gal Gadot. She starts out working with a small team. There's 3 other people, Yang, Bailey, and Parker, and they're looking to capture an arms dealer and use him as leverage, but it is revealed in the opening sequence, which is actually a quite good opening sequence, by the way, that she is also working for another agency at the same time. This secret agency is called the Charter, and they have an incredible piece of AI-powered technology called the Heart that enables them to predict the odds, plot best escape routes, etc., and send those pieces of information to Rachel in the moment to help her on her missions. During the attempt to capture the arms dealer, a young woman, Kaya, hacks into the team's comms and makes eye contact with Rachel before disappearing, so the attempt to capture the arms dealer ultimately fails as he dies of cyanide poisoning, and the team decides to follow the lead that Rachel has on Kaya. They track Kaya to Portugal, where they set up in an apartment, but are suddenly ambushed. The Charter, via the earpiece, tells Rachel to escape while she has time, but she refuses, preferring to save her friends. She later gets kicked out of the Charter for disobeying orders. She successfully rescues her friends with her epic fighting skills, and they escape in a van, but they are pursued by their attackers in a car chase. They barely escape, only for Parker to betray them, killing Yang and Bailey, and revealing his true colors to Rachel. Rachel eventually discovers that Parker and Kaya are working together to steal the Heart and use it for their own purposes. Parker and Kaya end up stealing the Heart and setting up shop. It is revealed that Parker wants to use the Heart to get revenge on the Charter for leaving him for dead after blowing up a weapons cache. It is also revealed that Kaya wants to use the Heart to expose people in India who are illegally experimenting on human beings and who took her parents and experimented on them. And then Parker wants to take down the Charter by killing them all. When Parker starts killing the heads of the Charter, Kaya chooses to side with Rachel instead, tells her what's happening and where she is so that Rachel can rescue her. Rachel rescues Kaya, kills Parker in the process, and takes back the Heart. At the end, Rachel rejoins the Charter on her own terms and invites Kaya to join them. So this summary leaves out some plot points, but that's mostly what you need to know about the movie. If there are any plot points that I left out of the summary, I will explain them as needed to explain my points about the movie, and so now on to my critique. My first main complaint about the movie is that, like with the show Andor, which I talked about in episode 2 of my podcast, I didn't particularly care about the characters. I didn't really form an emotional attachment to any of them. Perhaps that's not the point, it was just meant to be a fun action movie and I'm just reading too much into it, but I don't know, maybe it's just not my kind of movie, but I prefer having characters that I care about. So, I kind of cared about Rachel and her team because they seem like decent people trying to do the right thing, but I was not emotionally invested in any of them. When Yang and Bailey died, I was a little bit sad and kind of shocked because the betrayal is very sudden, but I was more shocked than sad, and after they were dead, I wasn't thinking about how sad I was that they were dead. The movie just kind of moved on, and so did I. I mean, the movie tried to show the emotional impact of Bailey's death, but not Yang's. And it was kind of sad, but because I didn't have a whole lot of a reason to care about Bailey, other than the fact that it's revealed he has a niece, and he very much loves his niece and wanted to go to her birthday party, but he can't because now he's dead, his death didn't actually hit me all that hard. Another issue that I have is that the main character, Rachel, didn't have a clear emotional stake in the plot. Yes, it's a save the world movie, but usually characters are motivated to save the world because there's somebody or something in the world that they care about that motivates them to save it. but this movie didn't show any one particular person that Rachel had a deep connection with and would care about so much that she would risk life and limb to save the world, and therefore them, other than when she goes back to help Parker, Yang, and Bailey. But Yang and Bailey are dead, and Parker, he betrayed her, so then she doesn't really have anybody to care about or try to save from the end of the world kind of thing. She has her team, but her relationship with the team is important, but she doesn't have, very clearly in my opinion, a deep emotional bond with any of them that would be like, I will do anything to save the world, I would die trying to save the world just to save you, that kind of thing. There wasn't any of that. So it just didn't feel like she really had a whole lot of a stake in it other than just the typical, well, I don't want the world to end kind of thing. And, I'm actually going to go on a quick tangent about Good Omens. So spoilers for Good Omens Season 1. If you haven't seen it, I will be doing a podcast episode on that, hopefully soon. I'm still writing it. Anyway, in Good Omens Season 1, it is kind of a save the world plot. Aziraphale and Crowley are trying to stop the end of the world. However, their reasoning for trying to stop the end of the world is sort of twofold. Firstly, they really enjoy Earth. They've come to love Earth in like the 6,000-ish years that they've lived on Earth posing as humans. So they've come to like Earth and all of the things that it has to offer, and Aziraphale at least doesn't see humanity as being like only bad. He sees that there's good in them, like they deserve a second chance kind of thing, and Crowley believes the same thing. He's like, you should test them, you should test their faith, but don't test them to destruction. That's almost the line I'm kind of paraphrasing. But anyway, it's a save the world plot, but they see the good in humanity, and that's why they want to save them. There wasn't anything like this in the movie Heart of Stone, where Rachel was like, well, you shouldn't kill them because there's actually some good to them. It was just, well, guess I gotta save the world now. Another thing is that Aziraphale and Crowley have a very deep bond with each other, having spent 6,000 years together, and they truly love each other, and so saving the world is also about them continuing to be able to be together. But then in Heart of Stone, there isn't anything similar to that. And it probably just is that I'm a sucker for character-driven shows. I like solid characters and character arcs, and Good Omens certainly delivered that. Like, that is one of Good Omens' biggest strengths, in my opinion, is its development of an evolution of characters. But in Heart of Stone, it wasn't really a character-driven story, so I didn't vibe with it as much, I guess. Maybe that's really my biggest problem with it, is just personal preference, but I still have some other points that I think are quite valid, so I'm going to continue with my podcast. Anyway, so yeah, the character didn't have a clear emotional stake in the plot. It was just kind of the standard, well, don't want the world to end, guess I gotta save it. So yeah, again, there's her team that she kind of cares about, but she doesn't have a deep emotional bond where, like, we really feel for her, and we really feel for them, like, we're supposed to, and, I cared enough to be like, oh, well, I don't want them to die, I don't want the world to end, but it's not like I was on the edge of my seat biting my nails like, oh my gosh, is she gonna save them in time, that sort of thing. So, anyway, that's my thought. Another thing is the main character didn't have a clear character arc, in my opinion. I don't think that she really grew or changed throughout the movie. Again, this might be just because of my bias towards character-driven plots. She didn't learn any important lessons, it really seemed, and nobody was shown to have learned something life-changing from the entire movie. I mean, yes, she rejoins the Charter on her own terms and says, like, even though we have this epic thing that can predict the odds, I still need to be able to, go against the odds and do my own thing, which was kind of her whole thing when she went to go save her friends after they told her to leave. So I just don't think that she really grew as a character in the movie. I don't know that really anybody grew as a character in the movie. I mean, Kea, who started out as an antagonist, realizes that, siding with Parker might not have been the right thing, but I wouldn't exactly consider that character growth necessarily either, more just a realization of, oh, this is not what I want, or I had something very different in mind, because she just wanted to expose people. She didn't want to start killing people, at least, as far as I understood the movie. But yeah, also, the main character, honestly, to me, didn't really have a reason to be the protagonist. Like, there was nothing that very clearly set her apart from others and made her worth following, because, as another example, in superhero movies, the reason why, we're fascinated by the main character is because they're not the norm. They have superpowers, and that's fascinating, and what do they do with those superpowers, and how do they use them to, make the world a better place, or in sometimes a worse place, or sometimes just a place. But, there's something interesting, there's something different, there's something fascinating about them that makes them worth following. There's always something unique with the character that makes us invested in them. I felt like the character Rachel didn't really have that. All of the characters, really, it's not just the main character, but all of the characters really felt like 2D stock characters that were just cogs in the plot machine. And Yang and Bailey were especially wasted characters, because they were there, they did some cool action stuff, and then bang, they're dead. So, yay. I felt like there was a lot of potential there, and like you see some of the team's camaraderie and how they get along together, and then Yang and Bailey die, and that's the end of that. And like the opening sequence is good, but I felt like those were wasted characters, and perhaps that's part of it, like they had so much potential, but they died, and that should be tragic. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. And now here's another thing. This would be having 2D stock characters that are just cogs in the plot machine. I'm gonna coin that phrase. This idea, this plot device, would be an interesting feature of a story if the characters were 2D stock characters that were just cogs in the plot machine, but then realized that they were being used in this way and then rebelled and turned it all on its head. Sort of Matrix-ish style, ? Or not talking about the movie, talking about the book, The Giver. Spoilers for that. When Jonas realizes that the quote-unquote perfect society, the quote-unquote utopia that he lives in is not so perfect after all, and it hides some really dark secrets. So, in that sense, he started out as a cog in the plot machine. I mean, not quite as much. He wasn't just a plot device like these people were, but he was just sort of a cog in the overall machine, but then learned the terrible secrets behind everything and rebelled and turned it on its head and ended up escaping, and that made the story a lot more interesting. But anyway, another thing, this might be just because I like entertainment that feels emotionally meaningful, perhaps. I think I've said this in my Andor podcast. I watch things in order to feel things. I don't know, it's just a form of escapism, it's a form of experiencing other emotions, I don't know. And, there's nothing wrong with just purely empty entertainment for the sake of entertainment. Sometimes that's really just what we need, but I guess maybe I wasn't in that mood when I watched this movie. But anyway, so my next complaint or critique is that the movie felt kind of pointless, because as I already said, nobody really learned or grew during the movie. I mean, yes, the charter took Rachel back and she was like, well, I'll only do things on my own terms. That was kind of learning, ? Maybe growth, ? But it didn't feel like the kind of meaningful, learning or growth that changes the story a whole lot moving forward. And, here's the thing. They had the opportunity to show the dangers of relying on artificial intelligence and not human ability, which is really a hot-button issue right now as AI continues to evolve, and with the introduction of ChatGPT and other AI services, it would be a good talking point. It's socially and culturally relevant right now as artificial intelligence continues to evolve and, find its niche in the world and change the way the world works. So they had the opportunity to show the dangers of relying on AI and not human ability, but they didn't follow through on that. There wasn't this is what happens when you rely only on AI and not human ability. It's more just Rachel saying, well, screw the odds, I'm going to do what I want. But yeah, they had the opportunity to do that, and then, they showed some of the danger. This is a plot point that I didn't mention this in the summary, so I'll mention it now. When Parker kills Yang and Bailey, he then also poisons Rachel and then implants a device in her arm that will essentially sabotage the heart so the people can't use it anymore. So then when she gets taken back to headquarters and is being patched up because when he poisoned her, he slashed her with a poison knife, so I think they were stitching her up. And then the heart starts going haywire, and everybody's freaking out. Rachel cuts the thing out of her arm that Bailey implanted there, and then they start to realize that the heart is dangerous. And then also, when Parker in particular, kind of Kea, but mostly Parker, were using the heart against the charter, they cut off the air supply and locked all the doors on the Hearts team, because they have teams all named after the 4 suits. There's the Hearts, which is what Rachel is a part of, and then there's clubs, spades, and diamonds. They're all part of it. They all have their heads, which are the kings, and each person in the organization is assigned a card, and Rachel happens to be the 9 of Hearts. Anyway, all that to say that when the doors get locked on the Hearts team, and they're all suffocating as the oxygen runs out, if that had been an AI going haywire thing and not a planned evil plot, that could have worked. That, or emphasizing the danger of using really powerful technology and then your enemies getting their hands on it and using it against you, that kind of thing. So I feel like that could have been an interesting talking point, but that kind of didn't happen in the movie, so yeah. I would say that if there was a point in the movie, it seemed to be that Rachel chose to listen to her instincts and do what she thought was right, even when the odds were against it, but the message wasn't strong enough, in my opinion. It doesn't have to slap you in the face to be a strong message, because that's not good either. Take, for example, some of the latest seasons of Doctor Who, where the episodes end with a literal lecture on "don't do this, that's bad" kind of thing. Oh man, I'm just really hoping they fix it when Russell T Davies and David Tennant come back, and then Varun Kudigatwa when he's the 14th. Would he technically? I think he would technically be the 15th Doctor, because David Tennant is coming back as 14, but whatever. I think they're still technically calling him the 14th Doctor. Anyway, sorry, random tangent. I'm very excited about that, because I love Doctor Who. But anyway, you don't need a message to slap you in the face to be a good, strong message, but you need a message that is thoroughly set up and paid off. So for Rachel choosing to listen to her instincts, maybe if we saw other agents, going with the odds and things going well for them, other agents going against the odds and then dying or something, and then Rachel choosing to go against the odds and then succeeding, I don't know. That, or I think even better, people going with the odds and it's still failing for them, and Rachel going against the odds and succeeding, then that would strengthen the message of, not letting the odds, not letting a machine determine what you do. It's sort of a free will problem at that point. And I think that would be really good, but they just didn't set it up and pay it off well enough. I'll get to the point that I was just about to bring up. I'll get to that later. I don't want to spoil that point just yet, but I think this podcast is kind of all over the place, but my brain is also all over the place. So, here's my state of mind today, folks. Basically, if they had set it up that Rachel usually goes with the odds in most cases, and it all works out, and that's good, but then when it comes to something pivotal like saving her friends, she goes against it and ends up succeeding, and then some kind of other interaction between her and the charter, and how, I guess some of that kind of happened, but we didn't see her going back to the charter and saying, hey, this is how things are going to be now. So I felt like that kind of lacked the impact that it could have had. I think it's more just I think they set it up, but perhaps it didn't pay it off fully. That might be the issue. Oh, and then we get to my next point, which is there was a quote-unquote men like you speech given by the female protagonist. It wasn't an all men are bad moment, but it had some of that feel because of the literal phrase, men like you. And it was said to, excuse me, it was said to the antagonist Parker. And during that scene, it was also just a random speech in the middle of a tense moment, in the middle of a fight where Parker has Kea, I think, in a headlock at gunpoint. Like, he could blow her brains out in any second. And so there should have been more fighting and less talking, but Rachel, and like, if Rachel really cared about the people she's trying to save, why stop and have this pointless speech that the movie absolutely could have done without? Also, I felt like I could just read the pain on the actor's face, the guy who played Parker, I think is Jamie Dornan, when he had to say, what's the problem? Because she says, you know what the problem is with men like you, and he's like, what? But I felt like you could just read the pain on his face having to deliver that line, and I'm like, oh, who wrote this? So yeah, these things physically pain me. I didn't like that. That was arguably my least favorite part of the movie. But anyway. Okay, this is actually the point that I was going to bring up previously, but I said I wasn't going to bring it up yet, but here I am now bringing it up. The other issue is that most of the exposition and reveals in the movie are purely verbal. It's just characters saying things at each other, and that is what's advancing the plot. And I don't like that. It's a really sucky way to do exposition. It's boring for the audience. There were much better ways that could have been done, but did they do that? No, they didn't. So, Parker's betrayal was a good reveal because you don't really see it coming, and it occurred not through a ha-ha, I'm the villain moment, surprise and killing your friends, but through pure action, just pure, cold, heartless action. He just shoots them out of the blue, and then it's revealed, oh, this is not who I thought this was. And that was really good. It wasn't just, he goes, ah-ha-ha, you have all secretly been poisoned. I am the villain. Because, that's what all movie villains sound like. But that was an example of a good reveal in the movie, in my opinion. Oh, there's also a bit where Kea and Rachel are stranded in the desert together because Kea didn't quite escape the way that she planned after stealing the heart. And as they're going along, Kea taunts Rachel, talking about part of Rachel's past that she looked up and has learned about. She tells Rachel how, she didn't do well in school, and she was kind of shunned for being a rebel and told that she wouldn't amount to anything. But this really didn't have that much emotional impact because it was just Kea word vomiting it. We didn't see Rachel struggling at any point. We're just told that she struggled, and it's so much easier to empathize with somebody who we see actively suffering than just being told, this person went through something. Like if we had a flashback to little school child Rachel being punished or something, and, or she overhears a conversation where there's adults talking and they say she'll never amount to anything, and just how that made her feel like absolute crap, that would have had emotional impact and we would have cared about her more. Because, it's really devastating to be told, you're worthless, and, especially as a child. So then you can see how that would influence her actions and stuff, and that would give her character a much clearer motive, is that she's trying to prove herself. She's trying to prove that she's not worthless, that, she'll amount to more than nothing, that sort of thing. I felt like that would have been far more impactful. And, I think that Rachel's character arc was supposed to be about how being a rebel and seeing the world differently can be beneficial rather than just letting the odds determine the best course of action. But for me anyway, that just didn't translate well in the movie because this reveal that she's a rebel and that she struggled with following rules and stuff, in regards to her past, is just word dumped on us. It's just exposition dumped. It's just, a character telling us this. We don't know for ourselves, we didn't see for ourselves that Rachel went through this struggle. So, yeah, I kind of already said one of the notes that, I was going to say. I think that if the movie had started with Rachel, the cold open was really good, honestly. I liked the opening of the movie. It felt like a solid action adventure movie opening. It was really good. But then after that, it just kind of went downhill, in my opinion. So I think that if the movie had started with Rachel as a child being bullied or scolded by teachers, or if we had seen her overhearing a conversation among teachers saying that she'll never amount to anything, then her evolution would be a lot clearer, and so would her overall character arc, which, to me was kind of non-existent. I think that her character arc could have been finding a healthy level of rebellion and rule following, and she could have taught the Charter about why just listening to the odds is not always the best decision. For example, if we saw the odds at a pivotal climactic moment in the movie and she defied them, and it worked, then the message would have been clearer, but that's not in fact what happened. So, yeah, also, another thing that was revealed verbally was Kaya's motive for stealing the heart, and, exposing the people who experimented on her parents, and, really caused a lot of problems in her life. It would have been infinitely more impactful if we saw her as a child back home in India, and her parents were being taken from her to be experimented on. Like, if we saw them being kidnapped, dragged away, and poor little Kaya, in tears, like, where are they taking my parents? And then her discovering what's happened to them or what is happening to them. And, her fear, her sadness, her anger, seeing that would have been so much more impactful than her being like, well, my parents were experimented on, and I want to get revenge on the people who experimented on them by exposing them, But yeah, my overall point in that is just that telling rather than showing completely flattens, completely steamrollers any emotional impact that dramatic and or character reveals could possibly have. So my overall thoughts on it are that this just felt like another kind of meh movie turned out by the big old streaming movie machine. And, I wonder, actually, if some of the heartless feel of many modern movies is due to the writers not being given the proper resources to create the good stories, like insufficient pay, poor working conditions, etc. Hence, the strike, the writer's strike that's going on currently, and then the actor's strike, all of that. I have to wonder if some of the reason why the writing in movies and shows, at least to me, has felt considerably subpar, is because the writers aren't getting what they need, and or the directors, producers, etc. are saying, nah, we don't actually want that in our show or movie, and so they cut what's actually a really great piece of writing. I have to wonder. And, I support the writers and actors in their strike. They deserve so much better than what they're getting for what they give us, honestly, and I hope that they're able to reach an agreement and get what they deserve out of this. But anyway, I think that was all my thoughts on this. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Talking to the Void. This is a shorter episode because, my points were all quite basic, I think. And yeah, I have another episode that I will be recording shortly, and it'll kind of build on this one a little bit. I'm using this as a jumping off point, because my next one is going to be talking about issues with modern shows, movies, etc., and, why I think those things are a problem and what could be done differently. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this episode. Take care, and I'm sending you all the love.